Hey, what's going on, guys? XpertFusion here, and welcome to Season 1, Episode 2 of my The Walking Dead Telltale Games TV series, adaptation series, where I'm going through and writing my own series based off of the Telltale Games storyline. I'm doing it episode by episode, writing the series of events, what would happen. And if I was being a showrunner for the series, what would I do for this entirety? I have about 8 seasons worth of content that I'm going to try to go through. Could take a while, it could take years, I don't know, but we're just going to go through it and see what we can do. You guys seem to enjoy the first episode, so I'm definitely going to continue this. And yeah, let's see how it goes. So episode 2 is titled Quarantine. It starts off with a group of military soldiers going through the streets of Atlanta, killing as many walkers as possible. The lieutenant, his name is Lance, orders them to return back as soon as possible so they can go through with the plan. And the soldiers are then overrun by a herd of walkers. So they're kind of in the same area as where the tank was in Season 1, Episode 1 of the main show where Rick was hiding. And Lance tells his squadron that they go through with Plan B, which is to bomb Atlanta. And that's what they did that night. And that's what we saw at the end of last episode was the bombing of Atlanta. He says they must extinguish the sickness and contain it. He says they have to make sure citizens are off the streets first. So they're just going through Atlanta, clearing it out, make sure no one's there, so they can bomb it and get rid of the sickness because they think that's going to help, right? So it's back to present now. In the morning, after everyone slept in their cars on the road, Kenny gives out granola bars for everyone to eat for breakfast because they don't really have anything else. They weren't able to move their cars at all that night. They had to all sleep there. Duck asks about his Flintstone vitamins because Kenny doesn't have them, and Kenny says he'll just have to go without them for now. Clementine continues sleeping next to Lee in the trunk of the truck. Cars start moving forward as Lee decides to wake up Clem. Kenny asks the couple from last episode where they are headed. They say anywhere safe, so they will be going to one of these shelters. All cars require a very extensive check-in. Lee says they should just say screw it and find a different way since he doesn't feel like these places are going to be safe. He mainly is saying this because he doesn't want to risk seeing people who will know about his past and then possibly arresting him or saying something about it. Kenny says they won't be able to and that they'll probably be here for just a little bit anyways, and they'll just move on after they stay at the shelter for like a night or something like that. They wait in a long car line leading to the gated entrance to the shelter. Clementine asks Lee how far Savannah is from here, and Lee says roughly a 4-hour drive, but they may take longer considering everything that's happening in the streets. I'm sure a lot of roads are closed and such, so it might take longer. Lee gets increasingly nervous as they get closer to tons of policemen and soldiers being around the area. As time goes by, their car is searched by the soldiers while everyone has to get out. Lee keeps his head down with a hood on because his sweatshirt that he picked up off the guy in episode 1 did have a hood, and he is wearing the hood just to make sure. The soldiers ask if they have any firearms on them, and they say they won't be held accountable for having them without a permit considering what's been happening. Kenny hands over his pistol, as does Lee, remaining to look downwards. They also pat everyone down to make sure they're not holding anything else. They are free to move on into the gates of the place, which seems to be like a homeless shelter before, which is now being used as a shelter for anyone. Kenny parks the truck as they get out and head for a long line leading into the shelter. Kenny tells Duck and Katja to avoid being near other people. He gives them shirts to wear as bandanas to cover their nose and mouth. Kenny also offers one for Lee and Clem. Lee accepts them and puts it on Clem. She asks why they need this, and Lee says the illness going around could be airborne, and to avoid anything going into her nose or mouth, she should wear this. In the building, they are checked out by doctors to make sure they don't have a fever or any bites. After they go, some guy behind them goes, and a bite mark is revealed on his stomach. The soldiers go with masks on and carry him out to another exit as he begs for mercy. Lee sees this as Clementine gets worried about this place. She tells Lee she doesn't like it here, but they have to deal with it. Lee says he doesn't either, but it's orders, so like he said, gotta deal with it. Everyone lays around in the main lobby area with military-style beds laid out. Kenny finds 2 beds in the corner of the place, so they head there. Kenny says this is so stupid how they're having everyone be in the same area as one another. This is just how the sickness spreads even more. Katja says as long as none of them are sick, then they should be good. The lieutenant of the army, who is Lance of course, gets up on a stage and blows an air horn to get everyone's attention. Everyone gets quiet and listens up to him. Lance says that he knows everyone is asking questions and wondering what the hell is happening. Lance says he knows just about as much as everyone else about it, but he will clarify something and explain why those jets bombed out Atlanta like that. Lance says it seems as though those virus is killing people. It also seems to be transferred through bites. It kills you, and then it turns you into a walking, dead, flesh-eating monster. Only way to kill these things seems to be to destroy the brain. Lance also says that they made sure Atlanta was evacuated before doing that, but there was herds of them there. They couldn't risk sending more troops down there to die. A man in the crowd yells out asking how they know they are dead, because what if they aren't? What if you were just killing an innocent sick person? Lance says, we've seen these things up close. Our soldiers have shot them multiple times in places where no human could possibly survive getting shot at. So they are certainly dead. Lance says whatever it is, it's airborne for sure, because it's not just here, and that it's happening around the whole damn world. So they all must stay put until it goes away. Someone yells out that's saying that what if someone comes here and has it? Lance says that's why they checked for bite marks and checked for any possible fever so they wouldn't have to worry about it. The man asks what they did to people with fever or bites, what happened to them. Lance doesn't answer to that. He just says that everyone will be given food and such in roughly 30 minutes once they get everything together. Kenny and Lee have a talk as Katja takes Clementine to the bathroom. Kenny asks Lee if he knows what he's doing with Clementine and if he needs help. Lee says he isn't sure if Clementine's parents are even alive, based on a phone message they left. If they never find them, she won't ever stop looking for them, and if they find them dead, it would be even worse. Kenny says they should just hope for the best. He tells Lee about their journey from the city area and how it was such chaos, full of riots and everything. He said they were at a gas station and some guy grabbed Duck, and he was on the guy in about 2 seconds and beat the absolute shit out of him. Kenny says there's nothing he wouldn't do for his family. Lee notices someone walking down a hallway. He tells Kenny he will be right back. He goes to follow the person he just saw. He finds the person around the corner in a room. It's Lee's brother. His name is Brandon. Kenny and Duck meet a father and son named Dante and Chris, whom are sitting right next to them. They catch up on life as Dante tells them about all the stuff they had to go through. Lee is surprised to see Brandon, as Brandon is also surprised to see Lee. He doesn't hug him like most brothers would. He asks what the hell happened. Lee tells him that the prison bus crashed when heading to another place and he got away. Lee asks about their parents and what happened to them. Brandon says he doesn't know. He was with Mom at the drugstore, because their family owns a drugstore, but he left to go back to the hospital for their father. Lee asks why Dad was in the hospital, and Brandon says he had a heart attack after hearing about what Lee did to that man. Man, his name was Sam, the man. Lee gets really guilty about this whole thing. He doesn't realize that it affected him that much. Brandon says the hospital went to shit and he was forced to leave. He doesn't know if Dad made it out, but Mom should still be at the drugstore. Lee then finally asks about Leah, his wife. Brandon says he hasn't heard from her since the incident. Brandon says it really hurt their parents since their only somewhat successful son got arrested for murder. Lee says they have to get out of here and find them. Brandon says they won't let anyone leave, or for that matter, get into Macon, because that's where the drugstore is. Brandon asks who he is with. Lee tells him about the little girl, but if he has to, he can just tell her to go along with his other family he came across so they can go to Macon together. Lee says they should try to sneak out or something, and Brandon says he doesn't know if that's a good idea. He tells Lee to just wait a few hours and they'll be fine. Lee agrees and goes back to Kenny, Katja, Duck, and Clem. Kenny introduces him to Dante and Chris. Time goes on, and before you know it, it's night time. Most people are asleep in the main lobby of the shelter. Lee doesn't sleep, though. He stays up and watches over Clementine and the others who sleep. A man sits on one of the beds and starts to sweat a lot. He goes over to the bathroom and looks at a bite mark on his upper thigh. It wasn't noticeable by the soldiers because it's on his upper thigh, and they weren't doing full body checks or anything like that. They were just kind of looking through the arms, the stomach area. This is upper thigh, like near the groin area. That's where the bite is. He goes over to the bathroom, looks at it. He collapses onto the bathroom floor and dies. Lee looks at his walkie-talkie and then looks over at the one Clem holds, which has these cute little stickers on it. Kenny wakes up and has a talk with Lee. He thanks Lee for sticking with them through this, since it gives Duck some company and gives him a guy friend to have some conversation with about guy stuff. Lee then sees Brandon across the lobby near the hallway trying to get his attention. Lee goes to follow him after telling Kenny he's going to use the bathroom. Brandon says that most guards are asleep right now, so if they want to get out, they should now. Lee looks over at Clem and then thinks about her. He tells Brandon he feels bad about leaving her behind like that without at least saying goodbye. Lee says maybe they should wait just a few more hours. He says their parents are strong and should be okay without them for a while. A guy gets up and goes to the bathroom to take a piss. After he is done pissing, or actually as he's pissing, the walker from behind gets up from the stall and bites his throat out in a gruesome manner. Two guards by the gate talk about a girl that one of the guards just recently had sex with. Just as they are talking, they hear a bunch of growling from the streets and notice a ton of walkers coming towards the area. They use their walkie-talkies to warn the other shelters and sound the alarms to wake everyone up. Lance comes into the lobby and makes sure everyone stays calm as they're slowly waking up from the alarms. The soldiers line up and start shooting into the herd, killing some of them. They all wear masks to prevent getting the sickness. They don't know how it fully works yet, but they think it might be airborne in that sort of a manner. The chief orders them to get back inside as they start tearing down the fences. Lance is alerted that the affected are coming in. Lance gets worried and decides to run up the stairs with his two right-hand men. Kenny keeps Duck and Katja calm as Lee calms down Clementine as she holds on to him. The walkers make it into the courtyard outside of the shelter as they start pouring into the basement entrance to the building where some of the soldiers went. Lance gets on the roof of the shelter and gets into the helicopter with his men. He looks down at the walkers and says that this is it. Kenny tries to get information from a nearby soldier, but the man says they have to stay calm. Walkers start busting into the main entrance. The soldiers hold it back with all their power. A man goes into the bathroom looking for his friend as he's attacked by two walkers. The man's wife is frightened while watching him be eaten alive. Lee tries to look for Brandon as the crowd starts pushing through to leave out the back exit. He loses sight of him as people start toppling over each other as the walkers from the bathroom attack and bite more people. Lee tries to clear an opening through the side exit for Kenny, Katja, Duck, Clem, Dante, and Chris to all follow. Lee heads through hallways unknown to him as he makes it outside to a courtyard. Walkers break open the fence near the courtyard as they see them there, and the door that leads back into the shelter doesn't open back up. So they're stuck in the courtyard with tons of walkers right outside of a fence that they're about to knock over. Lee grabs a shovel as Kenny grabs a pickaxe and Dante finds a hammer. It's all a bunch of tools that are found in the courtyard. They try to push back and fight off the walkers. Some walkers come from around the back corner and grab Duck and Chris at the same time. Kenny runs over quickly and kills the walker that is on top of Duck. He gets Duck to safety, leaving behind Chris. The walker munches on Chris's head. Dante stares back in shock as he sees this happen. The walkers from the front then leap onto Dante and eat him alive. Kenny gets a massive guilty face from what just happened because he didn't help Chris after helping his son. Lee breaks open the back courtyard gate with his pickaxe so they can go through and run off through the woods. Lee stops them in the woods, and he tells Kenny he has to go back. Kenny asks why, and he says he knew someone there, and he has to make sure they're okay. Kenny's confused by what the hell he's saying, but he just lets him go. Lee says if he doesn't make it back, just please look after Clementine. Lee tells him to go to a drugstore in Macon on Lingard Avenue. He says he will go back there. He'll make it back there. Macon's not that far away from here, by the way, so they'll get there quick. He runs around the walkers from the courtyard and climbs up a ladder to get onto the roof. Up there, he finds a shotgun with some shells as well as a granola bar. He eats it real quick and hops back down into the shelter itself. This shotgun was on top of a dead soldier, by the way. He sees the shelter infested with the dead. He sees a group of people running away from the area the opposite way of where Kenny went, and Lee follows them. Lee notices that all the military trucks and vehicles are gone, meaning they booked it. Lee notices that most people left in cars and such that were parked outside the shelter. He yells out for Brandon and ends up finding him near Brandon's car on the floor with blood pouring out of his neck. Lee freaks out and asks him what happened, but as Brandon tries to talk, he just gurgles on his blood. Brandon points to Lee's gun and gestures him to shoot him in the head and end his suffering. Lee realizes what Brandon wants him to do as he slowly dies. Lee can barely do it, but he puts the shotgun to Brandon's head and does it while tearing up. He shoots him right in the head. He walks back to the shelter to see all the fences torn down. Lee finds an axe on the floor beside a car. He takes it and goes towards the walkers, in which he finds a big group of walkers right outside of the building. Back with Kenny, they make it down a road and they see two walkers. Kenny tells Kasha to keep the kids back as Kenny smashes the one's head in with a shovel, but the other one grabs him and almost takes a bite out of him, but the walker is shot in the head by a sniper from the drugstore rooftop because they made it to the drugstore. Lee goes to the walker crowd and starts slicing and dicing with the axe. He kills roughly 8 until he is almost swarmed, so he backs up and continues to kill a few more in some brutal ways. Lee then starts running in the opposite direction back towards the drugstore. Kenny waves to the sniper and they wave back. Kenny asks if they know how to get inside of the drugstore. The man, whose name is Jordan, who looks just like Mike from Season 2 of the Telltale game, says their group are held up in the drugstore after the shelter was overrun and they are just going to wait for everything to die down. Lee continues walking down the road. He is then alerted by Clem on the walkie-talkie, almost forgetting he had the damn thing. She asks if he is okay, and Lee answers and says he is okay and that he's coming right now and heading to the drugstore. Clem says there are other people here. Kenny continues talking to Jordan, and he asks if they can come in, and Jordan says he'll have to ask his group first. Lee looks over to his left and sees a large group of walkers coming his way. Lee starts running. He makes it to the road leading up to the drugstore. As the group sees him running with the walker herd behind him, Kenny says, "Holy shit." Kenny also notices some walkers coming from the alleyway. Kenny goes up to the front of the door of the drugstore and starts knocking hard and yelling because Jordan ain't on the rooftop anymore. He went down below to find the others and talk to them. The walkers close in as Lee uses his axe to chop up a few. Duck is surrounded and one falls on top of him, but a woman named Carly comes outside with a Glock 17 and shoots it right in the head. Tons of blood gets on Duck, though. She yells at them and tells them to get inside as Jordan snipes a few walkers as well. They all get inside as the walkers swarm the drugstore. The camera pans out to the swarm of walkers within the road. And boom, that is the end of the episode. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you thought in the comment section below. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.